Check. There we go. I was getting progressively louder, and then it's finally out of the chat. Hello once again from Cinegear 2025 at the Condor Blue Booth at Stage 30. Come say hello if you're here. Watch. I don't know why you'd be watching it on your phone if you were here, but anyway, hello.
Big fans watching and live.
And we have a special drop-in guest that thank you so much for taking time to come and chat with me for a few minutes here. Do you want to do one of those there's some excitement going on at the Condor Blue Booth.
Exciting.
Do you want to give me one of those cheesy little elevator one line to describe
Absolutely.
who you are?
I live for that. So I'm Kylie Eaton. I am the interim executive director for the nonprofit Alliance of Women Directors. We advocate for women and gender expansive directors in film, television, and new media.
Interim? I thought I was speaking to the actual executive.
You got to talk to the board about that one.
So I do want to ask you about this alliance that I don't.
Yes.
I honestly, I'm completely ignorant to it. So
absolutely.
Apologies,
so no worries. I love talking about it. We were founded in 1997 in Los Angeles by a group of graduates from AFI's Directing Workshop for Women. And they wanted to sort of continue that collaboration and feeling of community. And in the 25 plus years since then, we've grown to over 600 members. We have branches in LA and Atlanta and a committee in New York just starting up. So we do live events in all three cities. We also have virtual programming and members throughout the country as well as internationally.
Is it like a union?
So we aren't a union. It's a nonprofit membership-based organization. So you have to have a certain level of directing experience to join us as a directing member. But we also have a tier of membership that's ally membership. Anyone of any gender, any profession can join. It's a great way to meet a lot of women directors. But yeah, so we're more of a trade organization.
Does it have a mission behind its existence for, furtherance of, women in the field or whatever, or?
Yeah, so we're just here to get more women and gender expansive directors hired. That's the main mission, is to get them hired, get their work out there. I mean, I don't have the most recent stats offhand, but I know TV episodic directing, it's somewhere about 38% women. Features is much, much worse.
Right.
It's somewhere in the 5 to 8% range for the top features. And for women of color, it's less than 1%. And so that's another big thing for us is the intersectionality of it, because women face barriers and then there are additional barriers based on other factors of your life. So we have a couple of programs, our Black Directors Advancement Initiative, as well as our Mentor Latina Directors Fellowship, our mentorship-based programs that our directors learn with directors who are, more advanced in their careers than them. They have community building as well as educational workshops that kind of help them get to that next level in their careers.
Now, I wanted to ask you a question without going too deep into the concept of representation and what should be a fluffy, fun Cinegear interview.
Yeah, exactly.
But based on those percentages, again, not quoting you directly, but what do you think, is there a large proponent of women that just not just that aren't getting the jobs, but that exist? Do you know what I mean? I'm sure you don't have the ratio of how many women directors exist compared to male directors, but I'm curious. When you mentioned, especially women directors of color, I was I don't know any of them. Now, I just told you I'm ignorant often, so that means nothing. But is the issue solely that they're not getting hired, or is it one of those things where there's just not as many into it? But you would know if 600 people or whatever. That's why I'm asking you.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Is we hear this a lot, and we have partnerships with studios and networks and production companies, and what we hear a lot is, well, they don't exist. They don't exist at the level that we need to be able to hire them.
Right.
And what you can do is you can go on our website at allianceofwomendirectors.org, and we have a searchable database of our members, and you can see just how many women of color, LGBT 50 plus women there are that have extensive experience working in film and television, commercials, music videos. And so it's not that they don't exist, and it's a pretty easy Google search for someone if they want to work with a woman director. Type it in, we'll pop up, our database is up there, and you can watch.
That's the advantage of your organization, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the big things, is showing that we we do exist and we do have the experience. I think a lot of times there's a quote that a lot of people like to say, which is like, men are judged based on their potential, women are judged on what they've already done. And so it's we exist to help close those gaps. There's a lot of gaps in the career of directing, right? Getting your first episode of TV to direct, that's a big gap. Getting your first feature film made, getting, if you've done a ton of indie features, getting your first studio, getting hired on your first studio film, that's another gap. So we try to design our programming to close those gaps, to introduce our directors to the gatekeepers and to the decision makers so they can see, oh, wow, this person has been working for 20 years. They've done this number of shorts. They've done, 3 indie features. They can handle an episode of TV. They've shadowed 20 times on on a TV set.
Yeah.
There's so many programs that offer shadowing, but that don't end in an episode of TV for them to direct. And I think that another quote that I love to use is that our members are over mentored and under sponsored, right? They can go and they can shadow and they can get mentored and they can do all the things, but if they don't have an advocate that's really fighting for them to be hired, you can spend your whole life shadowing and you're not going to make a living.
That's interesting to me. I have, whenever I think about topics like this, not specific to directing, it's I always wonder, the whole idea of like equal opportunity versus equal, I guess, like the actual equality in numbers.
It's equity versus equality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where it's like, you get these classic examples of like Europeans where they're like engineering and nurses. And it's like, no matter how much opportunity they create, they can never get 50-50 nurses or 50-50 engineers. It's always like male-dominant engineers, female-dominant nursing. Doesn't mean there's not good male nurses or good female engineers, but for some reason it falls that way.
Right.
And so I was always like curious, other than the people who transition where they go from being an actor and then they get behind the camera. Yeah. You'll see women directors like that, but I guess they already were in there to some capacity. Maybe it's easier. What the hell do I know? I'm not an actor.
I mean, I don't think it's easy for anyone to get a feature made. I'll say that, you know. But I think that something interesting you're saying with the example of the engineers and the nurses is that think about what you think of when you think of an engineer and a nurse. Think of the media that you see and who you see portrayed as an engineer or a nurse. And that's such a big thing of like, if, Gina Davis always says, like, if you can see it, you can be it, right? So if you can see yourself as a woman directing, I grew up in the age of like BTS on DVDs, right? I never saw a woman director in that BTS.
Sure.
I just had enough delusion to be like, well, I could do that. I want to move out to California and go to film school and do that. But it's really hard when you're not able to see yourself in those leadership roles and see people that look like you in those leadership roles. And so I think that part of it is showing our members at work, showing what they're doing so people can see those examples. And we do, I also think sometimes we get a little bit in the weeds of like, well, it's all actors that have transitioned, but there are a ton of women directors out there. I mean, look at Kathryn Bigelow. She's made some of the most amazing films of the last, 30 years. You have other women out there. Dee Reese is one of them, that aren't getting the accolades as much, that aren't like being nominated for Academy Awards, but they're making incredible films. And it's just about
there still hasn't been a Best Director woman, right? Kathryn Bigelow was nominated a couple times, but
no, Chloe Zhao won, right?
Was that recent?
Did she win? Kathryn Bigelow.
The fact that we're not sure.
I think there's been 2. There's been 2 that have won. I think there's been like 8 nominated. I actually made one of our business cards that we have has like 100 dots on it. Yeah, and it's like one tiny little dot for women who have been nominated. Again, it's
I thought it was fewer than that. I thought it was like 2 nominated and like no wins.
The past couple of years have been a little bit better, but
it's interesting the philosophy of it, because even if we use the lame nursing engineer thing, it's like, are there fewer engineers because there haven't been enough seen?
Yeah.
And then it would start making more people want to be it when they're kids. And so you almost have to like generationally build it in. I don't have the answer. I just find it interesting.
They've actually done a study on Dana Scully from The X-Files.
Yeah.
And the amount of girls that watched that show as young girls and went into STEM because they were interested in like, forensics or whatever it was, like seeing a woman in that position was so interesting to them and so like inspirational that they actually did like a long-term study on it, how it affected girls to see a woman in that role.
And Gillian Anderson is a badass. So.
I mean, who wouldn't want to be Gillian Anderson, right? I mean,
I watched
I want to be
X-Files
her.
and
when
I
I
wanted
grow
to be
up.
Scully. So
Right?
what does that mean?
Exactly.
Because Mulder seemed a bit unhinged. You know?
He's a little, he has his quirks, but.
And then moving into something a little bit more fun, you
Mhm.
yourself dabble in the writing and directing.
I do as well, yeah.
It said on the bio that I was sent that you prefer a bit of science fiction.
Sci-fi, action, fantasy, all the genre stuff.
All the genres.
All the genre stuff.
What brings you to? I guess I'm just trying to get a little nerd reading on you.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
what brings you to sci-fi? What's your interest there?
I think it's a really interesting way to sort of view current society through a different lens. Like I grew up on Star Trek, and
Now you're talking.
The procedural element of it I love. The newer ones are great in their own way, but you look at something like Next Gen, right? And it's like every episode you're kind of like thinking about a topic of, this society that seems like a utopia, but what's lurking
Sure.
underneath? You're thinking about like, what does it mean to be human versus like an android? Like really ideas that are so prescient now with AI that, they were writing about back then. And I think that to me, what's interesting is writing now and thinking about what people are going to look back on in 50 years and be like, oh, they were spot on about that. Or, oh, they were really pessimistic, but actually things turned out great. Hopefully,
Hey, Lucas, do you like that I've been able to turn multiple interviews into talks about TNG? Pretty good, right?
Wow.
There was we had a guy in earlier that shot season 2 of Picard.
Oh, cool.
So I got to talk Star Trek for
Nice.
more than I should have.
I love it. I'm a next gen. I'm a next gen and Deep Space Nine fan. So
Yeah, that's what I skipped the ones between. I watched Picard because
Okay.
the nostalgia,
yes, it was very nostalgic.
but I
loved
didn't
it.
watch the ones in between. Voyager was the last one I watched,
Okay.
and they had a couple of the shows.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know what those were. And then when Picard, I was like, hey, it's Patrick Stewart again. I got to tune back in.
It's great.
Uh,
You got to watch Lower Decks though if you haven't.
what's that?
Lower Decks, the animated series.
Is that good?
It's so good and it has so many callbacks and references to like the 90s era.
I think that's
Star
why I
Trek.
do it. Is I'm just trying to relive TNG. But whenever
Yeah.
it's funny, you said both X-Files. I've tried to both watch TNG and X-Files lately,
Yeah.
and there's something about that era of TV.
Yeah.
I think my brain's been warped since then. I can't do it. It's like I don't have the patience for because they start slow. Both of
Oh,
those
yeah.
shows start really
Oh,
slow,
yeah.
right before they get into
Oh,
it.
you got to go to like season 2.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm a completionist, so I start at the beginning, and then I'm like, I was into this, but yeah, my memory. And if you read reviews and stuff, it's like, no, it's excellent. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny.
Well, I appreciate your time, and
Absolutely.
thank you so much for sharing with me about what the Alliance of Women Directors, right?
Correct,
Is that
yep.
the website as well? Is it simple?
AllianceOfWomenDirectors.org, and then it's AWD_directors on all our social media channels.
I think it serves a good purpose. I appreciate you
Thank you.
sharing it with me and
Yeah.
educating a fool like me, and also for nerding out about Star Trek
I
for a little
love
bit.
it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks.
Woo!